Incredible Science Fiction, Issue 30. Clean start. Elf was uneasy. Outside the ship, Earth lay dead. The dappled sunlight still flecked the forest floor. The leaves still rustled softly in the gentle wind. But the animal and insect life that had once roamed this verdant planet was no more. It had been erased. Here lay the tiny body of a bird. There, the remains of a deer. All seemed to have gone well. Yet Bricks should have returned by now. Elf stirred restlessly behind her. The man thing stirred also. Elf extended a pseudopod from the protoplasmic mass that was her body. The eye formed. Lys studied the man thing. She watched him struggle to his feet, turn dazedly, and stare at her, his face a mask of disbelief. No, no, this can't be happening. Poor little earthling. There was so much trouble awaiting him. Elf was compassionate. Time enough later for him to face reality. Her thought waves struck his brain like a trip hammer. You. The man thing fell back, stunned, and sank to the deck plates. Elf returned to her musings. In a way, she regretted what she and Briggs had done, but had not the proctor said, by any means? Your task, therefore, is to ensure by any means that the third planet will not bring disharmony to this Federation. Alf remembered. The representatives of every planet of the solar system except one had been there. It was one of Lith's kind who said, "The method we leave to you. Earth is now entering the third development stage, nuclear fission. You know the fourth stage. Yes, space travel, and then time travel. Exactly. Man, as the dominant life form on the third planet calls itself, will have to be brought into the Solar Federation when that happens. And man is unfit to take a place in our Federation. Man is a brawling, bloodthirsty savage who would destroy us all. He must be made fit. That is your problem, Elf and Bricks. Somewhere, at some moment in history, the race of man took a wrong turning. It chose, instead of peace, a path of violence. You must find that exact moment and prevent man from taking that wrong turn so that he will develop peacefully, as we have. The problem had not seemed difficult to Elf. Then, alter a tiny incident in the time continuum and you alter the future for all eternity. But later in the ship, on the trip there, Lith had doubts. Bricks, perhaps it would be best if we only observed from a distance at first. Time is so vast, Bricks. Given time, man might take the way of peace of his own accord. What if we choose the wrong moment? We are scientists, Lith. We shall choose the right moment. But perhaps it would be better for now merely to observe. Lith shuddered as she remembered Bricks's extended pod had flicked a control, and the ship had flashed out of the emptiness of timeless space into the present, and her brain had reeled at what she'd seen. The sight of it had made Lith ill. The taking of one life she could understand if it were for the benefit of all life, but this was sheer butchery. Oh, Briggs, do you feel it? Those creatures forced to defend themselves while others try to kill them. Why? Because, yes, I can catch their thoughts. Because this is what they call war. But their thoughts are confused. My own brain feels if it is about to split. The moment we seek is not in the present. Brick reached for the controls. If we remain here, the accumulated hate in some of those crazed minds down there will drive us mad. Yes, Bricks, hurry, hurry! Their ship had flicked back into the blessed dead emptiness of timeless space, and Lith and Bricks had sat silent, recovering. It seems that our task will not be easy. So many of those things hardly seem worth caring about, but at least we know what to expect. We must force ourselves to think coldly. We must forget disgust and pity and look upon man only as a problem. I know, but Bricks, those poor, insane creatures, killing, destroying. Why? For what? Again, Bricks reached for the controls. When we know why man kills, we shall be able to find a cure. The race is intelligent, therefore it must survive. That is Federation law. We must find the moment when man first began to kill. Find that moment and alter man's history. It had been so easy to say. The ship had sped backward in time, but always the pattern was the same. Still they fight, brother against brother even. The same insanity. Bricks, enough. Some fight for good causes, but still they fight. I grow faint. Enough. Let us go back still further in time, somewhere in their history. Surely men were not like this. At first, Lith had pitied the poor creatures as they slaughtered each other. She and Bricks had even mingled with man on several occasions. The fools! Look how some of them suffer because others desire power over them. Their planet could be a place of peace and plenty, but some will not have it so. They know no better, Bricks. It was your desire that we assume their form and mingle with them. Have you had enough? No, Lith. Somewhere we will find what we seek. We will go further back in time. There must have been a time when man was not like this. There must have been. But there had been no such time. Always, no matter how far back they'd gone, it had been the same. In the end, Lith and Bricks had known the truth. Man had never known the path of peace, and Bricks had voiced his solution. It's no use, Elf. There is only one answer. Man must start over again. Man must be guided, taught from the beginning. If the race were determined and only two, a male and female, were preserved and taught, perhaps man might make his planet the paradise it could be. We could guide the two survivors, and when they'd completed their short lifespans, we could guide their children and their children's children until hate and violence have been bred away, and man can go on to a history of peace and a place in the Federation. Yes, I see. Lith had agreed because it had seemed to be the only answer. There had been no more to see when the ship materialized in a forest on Earth. I have brought us back to the present so that we may find intelligent, advanced specimens. You know what to do, Lith. Yes, I will find a male human of the highest possible type and return with him in exactly 10 Earth days, as I shall return with a female. We are agreed, then. Carefully, Bricks had set the destroyer in 10 Earth days to the split second. It would activate itself. Energy would stream out in all directions and man would die. It was necessary, yet Lith wondered, Bricks, is there no other way? None. There it is. Set. Let us be off. No, Lith had to admit there was no other way. And so, a moment later, their craft's two scout ships had sped silently away. And in one, Lith had stared with a little grimace at the reflection of the shape in which she'd forced her plastic, malleable, protoplasmic body. There had been no great urgency at first, and so her scout ship had spun over seas, whisked across continents. Lith had searched far, but on this planet the teeming cities were the centers of culture. Lith had chosen the largest for the final search, and her choice had seemed simple. She found her specimen and followed him, awaiting her opportunity, but, well, hello, beautiful. I What's the matter, gorgeous? Cat got your tongue? You don't have to play coy with me now. I know the score. I know you've been following me. Come on, let's get acquainted. No, let me go. At first, Lith had chosen a male who seemed to have all of the qualities she'd sought. But these creatures were not all they seemed. When she'd looked into his mind, what was there had sickened her. She stunned him with a thought wave. But for that bad one, there had been thousands of good ones to choose from. Lith had been unable to make up her mind. She'd let time pass. The days had sped by, and, in the end, time had simply run out. Only a few moments left. In seconds, the destroyer would activate itself. Lith had had to choose there at, then at once, at random, before it was too late. Him. The male had fallen unconscious, and in that instant Lith had thrown a protective, invisible web of counter energy about him and about herself. Just in time. Suddenly the city had become silent. Suddenly the city had died. Man had died. There'd been no need then for Lith's disguise. The destroyer had done its work well. She'd lifted her prize and carried him out of the store, out into the dead city. She moved through the city sadly, through the silence and the stillness. Lith sighed, remembering, yes, it was a great pity, but there had been no choice. Behind her lay the hope for the future of man, and somewhere out there Brix would be coming with its mate. But darkness was setting in now, darkness, like a morning veil over the death all around the ship. Alth arose and glided toward the port. She scanned the clearing, peering into the lengthening shadows anxiously. Behind her, the man stirred again. Something was wrong. Lith could sense it. Her anxiety and worry had relaxed her mental hold on the man behind her. He sat up, staring wide-eyed at Lilith. And when Lith turned and saw the awe in the man's eyes, she was filled with pity. No, you must not be afraid. Try to understand. Your world is dead, but you will live. Through you and a mate, your race will live again. It was then that the man's thoughts reached out to Lith. It was then that she suddenly understood the true meaning of the look in the man's eyes. You, no. Even before his body began to draw into itself, to change, to lose its shape, even before Brix returned to his natural form. Choke. The end. Marbles. It was a solemn moment for the carefully picked and extensively trained crew of the X 17. After long months, they now stood upon the threshold of fame and fortune. A glorious adventure for them twinkled beckoningly from the vast black void overhead. The X 17 was to be the first man carrying rocket to be launched from Earth. They would be the first Earthmen to reach another planet. The four men stared up at the star studded heavens in awe and fascination. Look at 'em up there, waiting for us. Stars, planets, the whole universe waiting. Funny, for all we know, those bright little pinpoints we see up there might be nothing but marbles. Shiny little marbles. Don't worry, Hollis. Those stars up there are a lot bigger than marbles. And they can't be played with either, not without getting your fingers burned. Some of those fireballs up there have, we don't know how many millions of degrees heat burning them up. Not the one we're going to land on, I hope. No, kid, not the one we're going to land on. Mars doesn't burn like a star. Mars is a planet. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a momentous hour in the history of mankind. The launching ceremony began. The battery of loudspeakers droned over the hushed crowd of gathered notables. The first spaceship capable of reaching other planets is ready for its perilous journey. In a few moments, a button will be pushed. World will contact world. The universe will shrink, and man will be its shrinker. All of the years of research, all of experimentation and theory and trial and error were almost over. As the X 17, with its hand picked crew, hurtles through space to its destination, every inch of its trip will be recorded here on Earth. Every experience of the men within her alloy shell will be noted down. We will be in constant communication. The loudspeakers droned on. The general turned to the crew members. McGraw, Hollis, Inkers, Danton. Every precaution has been taken for your safety. Every scientific device, every comfort known to man has been placed at your disposal. You will be as safe a million miles out in space as you would be in your own bed at home. The general lifted the champagne bottle. Today you stand as Columbus stood over 450 years ago, on the brink of the unknown. May you make as stupendous and exciting a discovery as he made in his day. I hereby launch the first planet bound rocket, the X 17. Moments later, within the X 17, four men lay in their shock couches awaiting their destiny. Ready, Captain McGraw. Ready, sir. A finger moved, buttons clicked. A man reached for the stars with an ear splitting roar. Yes, man reached for the stars with a needle nosed monster that spit and howled and shuddered, and leaped up into the blackness on a finger of orange flame. It's out of sight. May God be with them. They are in his hands now. For the first few days of the Pioneer's space voyage, the reports came in as expected. This is McGraw of the X 17. Everything is proceeding according to plan. Ship is performing beautifully. No instrument failures. You're coming through to us clearly. How do you hear us? We hear you fine, McGraw. But by the end of the second week, a curious note had crept into the communications. The message came from McGraw, sir. He wants to know if we want the data exactly as he and the others see it. Well, of course, blast it. What else have they been doing? What's data worth if it's not accurate? Tell McGraw to cut out the comedy. And by the end of the third week, I don't understand it, sir. Not at all. The X 17 is making good headway. They've encountered little or no difficulty, and yet, the data, these reports. Well, what about these reports? Sir, if these reports are correct, if we are to believe these reports, then our entire concept of the universe has to be revised. Revised? What the deuce are you talking about? McGraw says the further the ship set gets from Earth, the smaller their destination seems to get. What? Why, that's nonsense. They must be pulling your leg. Contact them at once. Yes, sir. This is Earth, calling X 17. This is Earth, calling X 17. Come in, X 17. This is McGraw on X 17. What's up? I just gave you my report. McGraw, this is General Butler. What's this all about? You say your destination is getting smaller. It got smaller, sir. We just passed it. It was no bigger than a bouncing ball. Anchors donned a suit and went out and picked it up. We have it in the ship. Mars? In your ship? No bigger than a rubber ball? McGraw, do you know what you're saying? Yes, sir, and we've changed course. We're going to go over and pick up Venus. The way it looks, sir, we've disproved all astronomical theory. Everything in space is no bigger than as seen by our largest telescopes on Earth, in reality. Across the cold void crackled the electronic hum of human conversation as a lone spaceship trailed a zigzag course through black, empty space. Reports that mocked man's knowledge, data that laughed at science. Uranus is no bigger than a volleyball. We've taken it aboard. Jupiter is like a rubber balloon, light as a feather. You could no more land on Venus than an elephant could sit on a pinhead. On Earth, scientists and army officers and government men looked up into space at the stars and the planets, gleaming like so many diamonds. What are they talking about? What are they trying to do? What's the matter with them? Don't you know? While out in space, the X 17 roamed aimlessly through the void. Some of the crew are having a game of catch with Mercury. Others are playing ring toss with Saturn's rings. We gave them every scientific development known to man. We trained them, tested them, proved to ourselves they were good men, capable men, that we could count on them. But what we hadn't counted on was space. The stars! Look at the stars! They're nothing but marbles, bright, shiny marbles. Come on, let's play marbles. We hadn't counted on the effect of space on man's mind, the extreme vastness of it, throwing man up into that vastness. We hadn't counted on the mental changes that would occur when man was subjected to space travel. This is McGraw on the X-17. You should be with us now. Ho ho, what a time we're having. I'm through calling back reports. I'm going to join the others. We have the universe in our hands. Hey, fellows, wait for me. Yes, the X-17 is manned by a crew, driven insane, utterly insane. Hey, fellas, I can't play anymore. I've lost my marbles. The end. Conditioned reflex. Prologue. On the screen, a world died. Mountains of flame leaped 10,000 miles into space, and at the fire's heart, a planet rift. The students in the lecture hall leaned forward, hushed, studying the awesome spectacle, hardly aware of their professor's dry, objective words. This, ladies and gentlemen, is or was a planet of the star Alpha Centauri. We have named it Thor. The professor motioned to the fiery image on the movie screen. Too distant from Earth to be picked up by our telescopes, Thor was discovered and photographed only because it suddenly burst into flame. Why it did so, we do not know. The spectroscope analysis shows Thor's atmosphere to be made up of 1 part oxygen and 9 parts methane. Obviously, life as we know it could not have existed in such an atmosphere. Story. The ship descended slowly from space. When it entered the methane atmosphere, its plastic hull was barely moving. The magnetic drive in its stern hummed softly. Then the ship touched down. Swiftly, the pilot of the ship was conducted to the leaders. Each leader, in turn, touched tentacles with them. A great honor for Quor. The pilot had just completed the first intersolar system spaceflight. After the warm greeting came the questions. Life. You say there is life on the third planet? Earth, by name. So its inhabitants call it, yes, many strange forms of life. I observed the planet for some time. I made recordings of its languages. I made photographs of its creatures. It is a place of violence. Its highest form of life is vicious, dangerous, and ambitious. Man, he is called. He has no space travel, but every moment that goes by brings him closer to it. Bodies in the plastic seats stirred uneasily. The leaders dismissed Quor and conferred in hissing whispers. What if they should come here? What if they should challenge our supremacy in the galaxy? We dare not take the risk. Once again, Quor was summoned. There was no question as to what course to follow. Logic provided the answer. Return to Earth. But I do not understand. For what purpose? The planet must be obliterated. This time, Quor, you will land. You will go among them. You will study their weapons, their weaknesses. When we attack, we must not fail. Our surgeons have studied the data you brought back. It will be a simple matter to alter you so that you may pass as one of them. And so it was. One day the leaders gathered again. One day Quor had mastered a language of Earth. One day he moved easily in his new body. Your surgeons have done well. You, Quor, are, indeed, a man. But appearance is not enough. Upon you depends the ultimate fate of our world. Be wary. Remember, you must not be discovered. You must learn to live, to think, to feel as men do. You must do more than resemble a man. You must be a man. Remember that. This time there was no touching of tentacles. How could there be? The ship rose slowly. Slowly, then, clear of the atmosphere, it raced into space, its magnetic drive whining. The language Quor had mastered had been spoken in one of the many land areas of the third planet. Quor headed his spacecraft there. The ship landed at night, silently. It was the work of an hour to conceal it with brush. Another half hour after that, a young man appeared at a farmer's door. A meal? Why, I reckon we can spare some food. If you're willing to chop some cordwood in return. What's your name, boy? John Davis. I am willing. I am looking for work. It was important that Quar learn every minute detail of being a man before he could go on with his work. This was as good a place as any to start. Huh, he sure doesn't spare the horsepower, does he? What do you think, Emmy? We could use a hired hand. Why, I don't see why not, Fred. He seems like a nice young man. It was so easy for Cor to be accepted. To fool these earthlings, Cor laughed inwardly. Later, even as he gagged down the alien food before him, they were like children. Okay then, John, 50 a month and room and board. That's my best offer. Take it or leave it. Smoke? Smoke, oh yes. It was important to learn everything. Quor accepted the thin white tube, watched the farmer, then imitated his actions. And it's settled. Come, I'll show you to your room. You'll like it here. Well, we'll try to make it pleasant for you, Johnny. So, when men were tense, when they were nervous, excited, engrossed in important business, they put a white tube to their lips, lit it, and relaxed. Poor shuddered. He could remember it for future reference, but now he was sick. The alien food and the white vapor from the white tube had not agreed with him. In his room, the food he'd eaten spewed up. An unhappy beginning, yes, but this was Quar's job. Observe, learn, imitate, integrate, move. Find the information his leaders sought. Quar accepted his role, along with its discomforts, and some he even became used to. Let's take a break, son. Here, have a smoke. Thanks. Well, son, how do you like it here? Fine, just fine. Quar had no difficulty learning. He shuffled his feet, looked embarrassed as he'd seen men do, and none suspected him. There was even a certain amount of amusement to be found, at first, with the younger female. Johnny, huh? Johnny, wouldn't you like to kiss me? So many times I've thought you were going to, but you but don't you want to kiss me? Well, why, yes, of course, Anne. Only you're shy. Oh, Johnny, don't you know anything about women? Don't you know how I feel? I'm not sure, but it doesn't matter. I'm afraid. I think it's time for me to be moving on. No, Johnny, no. You're not thinking of leaving. Where are you going? Nowhere in particular. I just think it's time for me to be going. I'm restless. Yet the female was a problem near the end. She spoke vaguely of a thing called love, but Cor knew that he'd succeeded, that he'd been accepted as a man, and so he moved on. Johnny, come back someday, Johnny. I'll be back someday. The rest of Quar's task was fairly simple. Once sure that wherever he went he would not be suspected, he moved fast. At the A bomb proving grounds in New Mexico, the building in Washington, D.C. that men called the Pentagon, Core gathered his information, and when he finished, his ship rose silently from Earth one night and raced homeward toward the stars. They met him at the spaceport, his people. Core had not seen them in so long. He shuddered as one of them wound a tentacle around his arm. Are you ready with the information? Had he been among men too long? Had he truly begun to live and think and feel like men? Core breathed deeply of the familiar atmosphere around him and smiled. I am ready. Core was not ready. Core was nervous, frightened. He could not help but wonder what if his information were not complete? What if he'd overlooked some vital detail? Wait here. The leaders will summon you shortly. Core paced the floor before the two massive doors restlessly, as a man might. He noted Riley, yes. He had learned his part well. He had conditioned himself. He almost behaved like a man instinctively. The leaders will see you now. Gulp. Core stood before his leaders, the data in his hand. I joke. Well, you behave strangely, Core. We are waiting for your report. Are you ill? No, I'm not ill, just a little tense. So, it is understandable. Your mission was of infinite importance. Relax, then. We will wait until you have calmed down. Moore shook. His information had to be sufficient. The entire council of leaders was here to hear him. It was an honor beyond honor. So much depended upon him. Their cold, intelligent eyes watched him as he fumbled nervously, watched him as he took the little package from his pocket, watched him as he placed a white tube between his lips, unconsciously watched him as he rubbed a red tipped stick on a brown strip of bone. Epilogue. The professor paused as if to make certain that he had his student's full attention. No, there could have been no life on Thor, not in a methane atmosphere. As you know, methane is a highly combustible gas. The tiniest spark ignites it. The professor stared at the flaming fury on the screen. Somehow, though, Thor's atmosphere was ignited. The problem is how? Would any of you care to venture an opinion? The end. Barrier. The ship was a symphony of power. Man built her and hurled her into the void, toward the moon. Who first reached Luna? Who first set up bases and missile launching sites on Luna? Controlled the Earth. Man, in his pride and in his fear, reached for the stars. The ship rose on streaming tendrils of flame, and then it died. In the black, empty reaches, something invisible, something impalpable, held up a giant palm, and the ship crashed itself against that palm. Starfire X1 to Earth. We're falling back. Ran into something, some wall, invisible, losing pressure. The ship became a corpse, a dead thing, deflected back along its course. Glowing white hot from the friction of re entering Earth's atmosphere, it screamed into the North Atlantic, sending up a hissing, skyscraper high splash. The ship died, and afterward, the man whose dream she'd been, the man who'd built her, sat with the generals and the statesmen. Gentlemen, there's no question of what happened. The Starfire was deliberately destroyed. We don't know how, but we know who. You suspect the Eastern Alliance, General? Exactly, Professor. For 48 years, Earth has been split into two camps. For 40 years, we've had Cold War. The answer is obvious. It's no secret that the Western Federation countries are in a race with the Eastern Alliance, Professor. Whichever of our governments sets up the first military base on the moon can dictate its own terms. Our intelligence reports that the Eastern Alliance's rocket is not yet ready. So, we had to be stopped, but we won't be stopped. Professor Milton Enright sighed. War, always war. Men reach for the stars and they are still children, fighting among themselves, playing with forces they cannot comprehend. Professor Enright, you will build a second Starfire, but the ship must be completed in record time. We must know what destroyed the previous ship. This one will be armed. Will you do it? It seems I have no choice, General. No, there was no choice. The race was more urgent now, more deadly. Out in the sun baked North American desert, an alloy skeleton began to grow. Man poured his sweat and toil and treasure into it. And for what? Seems a pity, doesn't it, General? Out there, all the universe beckons, and yet we build for war, for destruction. We build for peace, Enright. There will be no war if we can reach Luna first. The Eastern Alliance would be helpless. Of course, if we are first, and if we can penetrate the barrier they've placed between us and Luna, otherwise, otherwise what? The professor did not complete his thought. That was the problem for statesmen and generals. The professor was a man of science. He built, and he built well. Yes, the professor built well, and swiftly. There was a day at last when a second song of power sang into space. Professor Enright, I think we're getting close to something. The instruments are reacting, especially the AN meters. There's something ahead. Whatever it is, it doesn't show on our screen, but it must have tremendous power. What is it? What's happening, Enright? The ammeters are going crazy. Wait a minute. That must be it. Energy. There must be a solid wall of energy ahead of us. A force field, of course. That was what the Starfire X1 struck. Alter course. Turn back. No, this is General Hastings. You carry guns. Turn them on that force field, or whatever it is. Blast your way through. That's an order. Yes, sir. Blast, destroy, tear to pieces. Professor Enright shuddered. Would men never learn that there were other ways to resolve their problems besides using destructive brute force? Starfire X2, this is Hastings. What's happening out there? Nothing, sir. It's no use. Our bursts are hitting whatever it is, all right, but nothing happens. We'll have to turn back. Our most powerful weapons, and nothing happens? There must be a way through that force field. There must. You've got to find a way, Enright. If there is, we'll find it, General. At least it will be interesting to try. It all seemed so senseless to Professor Enright. Wearily, he returned to his laboratory, while across the world other men emerged from theirs. Across the world, on the flat plains of an Eastern Alliance country, men checked another rocket and found it ready. And soon another trail of fire streaked into the infinite void. Another man made miracle hurtled upward toward Luna, and again it was as if something invisible, impalpable, raised up a giant palm. But Professor Enright knew nothing of that, not then. It was some days later that he was summoned by the president of the Western Federation and handed the note with its formal diplomatic phraseology. Well, it's incredible. They think we erected the force field. Does this mean a ship of theirs struck the force field just as ours did? Exactly. The fact has been verified, which is precisely why you're here, Professor Enright. Is there an explanation? It can only mean that the barrier is a natural phenomenon. There can be no other explanation. Then, neither our government nor the Eastern Alliance will ever reach the moon. It's a stalemate. I didn't say that, sir. What man can imagine eventually he can do. If we could but pool our resources, Mr. President, share our knowledge. With the alliance? Between us, we might succeed. At least it would prevent war for the moment. For the moment. Professor Enright felt suddenly tired. It was all so futile. But for the moment, he could work with Petrov, the alliance's most brilliant mind. He could forget that Petrov was an enemy. What do you think, Petrov? Perhaps, in principle at least, the device should succeed. If your device can direct enough negative reaction against the field, the result should be the negation of at least a portion of that field. I say yes, and right, let's build it. So once again the forces glowed. Starfire X2 was stripped down and refitted, while Earth's Federation and alliances watched jealously. Earth remained two armed camps, yet the work went on. One day the Starfire X2 was ready, and this time, when she rode her tail of flame spaceward, suspicion rode with her. This time there were men in her who were new to space, men who watched every move intently when the agony of takeoff was over, and Professor Enright sat at the controls. Now, gentlemen, we shall see. The instruments show the field to be directly ahead of us. If we have calculated correctly, the beam of negatrons we send out will neutralize a portion of that field. Ready, gentlemen? Then I will press the firing stud. Now! Violence, coruscating sheets of raw energy, power to rival the power of the sun. The emptiness of space glowed, fluoresced, and inside the ship men shuddered. There seems to be an opening, all right, but how do we know it's safe to pass through the opening? We've thought of that. We carry several guided missiles. Petrov will place these monkeys in one of them. If the monkeys survive passage through the opening in the field, we will. From a tiny port in the Starfire's side, a monkey carrying torpedo like missiles streaked toward the glowing opening in the force field barrier. There is an opening. The missile is going through, but we don't know yet what is happening to the monkeys. It would be well not to be too hopeful. I'll guide the missile back through the opening. However, Enright and Petrov had planned well. The test showed that later, the monkeys were frightened, but healthy and unharmed. The Starfire was guided through the glowing gap in the barrier. So man could reach for the stars after all. Somehow, though, Professor Enright felt no pride. He leaned back, relaxed, and then, suddenly, every nerve within him, every sense drew taut. General, quick, look! The other ship was flat, disc shaped, huge, inscrutable. It came at them at an impossible speed, and there was a threat in every line of its forbidding body. Another ship? Out here? Professor, it's not possible. They're firing at us. That was a near miss. But next time we may not be so lucky. No, a race that can build a ship like that would fail to destroy a target only if they wish to fail. But they're still firing. What do they want? I think I know. General gave the order to turn back. That's what they want, for us to go back through the gap in the field. Man, in his might, ran like a frightened rabbit back through the opening he'd made in the barrier. Professor Enright nodded to the screen. I was right. Now they'll probably repair the gap and fix the field so we'll never be able to get through again. We'll get through. Whatever was in that ship won't stop us. We'll get through. No sooner than my government. The fools, the poor pitiful fools. Even then they did not understand, did not grasp, even when Enright tried to explain that man could never reach for the stars. Never? You're mad, Professor. The creatures in that ship, whatever they are, fear us. That's why they built that barrier. And if they fear us, we can beat them. Professor Enright shook his head. Can we, General? You saw their ship? No, that's not why they put up that barrier. My guess is that some members of the human race have been judged and found wanting. They've caged us in. Caged us in? Why? If there are other intelligent races in the universe, why should man be singled out, to be caged in? The answer was obvious, so bitterly, pitifully obvious. Even the general, in his arrogance, finally understood when Enright pointed it out to him. Why, General, well, what do we do with the dangerous animals until they've been tamed? The end.